Welcome to Stop Overthinking, the podcast for overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists who want to feel calm and confident enough to handle whatever life sends your way. I'm your host, Kristen Odegaard, a women's life and mindset coach, lifelong educator, and recovering perfectionist. Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of the Stop Overthinking podcast, When You Don't Like Someone. So today I'm going to talk about this situation of not liking another person. And while I'm not advocating this, it seems like it's just the reality of our human experience. You're not going to like everyone, and conversely, not everyone is going to like you. What I want to talk about today is what to do and how to manage yourself and your thinking when you don't like someone. What I have noticed is that there are times that we will acknowledge this, but there's often a lot of times that we don't acknowledge this, even to ourselves. It's like we don't want to be the person who doesn't like other people or who is judging other people. We think that we need to be kind and open and friendly to everyone, so we're just not going to say it or even admit it to ourselves. Sometimes we justify this by focusing on what the other person does or doesn't do, what they say or what they don't say. And this is where I want to focus, because when we become fixated on the other person, this is disempowering in so many ways. So first things first, when I'm talking about a relationship, okay, which is generally how you can decide liking or not liking someone, the relationship and what you think about other people happens completely in your mind. A relationship isn't something that you can touch, but it's all the ways that we think about another person and what they do, what they don't do, and what we make it mean. So sometimes I will have a client or someone tell me, I don't even have a relationship with my sister-in-law. She's so judgy and critical, and here's all of these things about her. And in that situation, I just want to point out that you do have a relationship with her. Just because you don't talk to her doesn't mean anything about the relationship, because you're thinking about her. You don't have a very good relationship, but it's there. So sometimes we're not even honest with ourselves about how much we think about another person or how another person's impacting us. And it's like, ultimately, we know that these thoughts aren't useful and helpful, and we don't want to keep focusing on the negative, but it comes up. And sometimes these thoughts are going to come up and it seems so relevant and so important. And then it generates these negative emotions that we probably don't want to deal with. And so then we can try and change our thinking or distract yourself or justify why you don't like this person. And it becomes a cycle that just wastes a lot of time and energy and effort. So regardless of how often you talk or interact with someone, if you don't like them, it's still probably recording there in your brain at some point. And you may go around and tell other people all the things that are wrong with others and want to have people agree with you and validate your feelings. And again, you may just have this all going on in your own brain. Regardless of all of that, the very first step for you when you don't like a person is just to own where you are. Instead of focusing on what that person did wrong, instead of thinking, I can't believe they said that, or I can't believe they made that decision, just own that you don't like this person and be aware of your thinking. Notice things like that come up in your brain. Friends don't do that. Spouses shouldn't act that way. People shouldn't behave that way. Notice your thinking and tell yourself the truth. I don't care for their behavior. I don't approve. I don't like them. You don't need to say it out loud, but you do need to admit this to yourself. When you focus on what you are thinking and feeling and believing, the focus is on you and not them. And this is where you do have control and power and choices. This is where it's more useful than focusing on wanting other people to be different. So again, I hear this from clients in some version every week. Like, I don't like a person for whatever reason, and they need to change, do things the way I want them to, so I can like them or that I can at least feel better. Okay, so clients don't usually say it like that. That's kind of what I hear. What it really sounds like is like, I don't like my best friend's spouse, partner, or boyfriend. I'll just call him the partner. He says this, he treats her this way, he's loud, he doesn't help her with stuff around the house. Her family doesn't like him either. I'm just concerned for her. And then after this description, the person sounds pretty unlikable. But here's the problem. This person, this boyfriend, this partner isn't on the call. This person isn't asking for ways to be liked or to build relationships or to show up differently in the world. When the client is focusing on this boyfriend, this partner, that's the problem, the focus on the other person. So, number one, your first step is just to own your thoughts and feelings where you are at. You don't like them. Okay. And this can feel really uncomfortable for us because for some reason we feel the need to like other people, like we need to get along with everybody. But the reality is, you don't like them. And ignoring or blaming or distracting is doing nothing but clouding the issue for you. And people resist this sometimes. I'll say, well, but you don't like him, right? And it's something like, well, he does have some good qualities, and my best friend seems okay with this, or, he's funny sometimes. And I just don't want to tell my best friend that I don't like him, so I try and be nice. So notice there that this is just ignoring what you really think. You're like stepping away from not liking this person and just pushing it away. But it's really hard to change the dynamics of a situation if you don't understand where you are at. Okay, so you've got to own those things. It can be a different angle. Sometimes a client may come to me, and maybe we've been coaching for a while, so there's a little more awareness, and they'll say, well, I know this is really terrible, but I don't like my sister-in-law. And this is actually more useful than trying to justify all of the reasons you don't like them. Because at least this person, or coming at it this way, is that you're noticing, I don't like her. And the focus is on what, you're thinking and believing and feeling, and not on the other person. Because that other person is someone we can't control. So when the focus is on you and you're wanting to change and you're wanting to feel differently, that's something that we can work with. Another place where I see people getting stuck in being able to own what they're thinking is because they're judging themselves for not liking another person. So if we go back to like the boyfriend partner, maybe I'll ask the client, like, why is this a problem for you? And they'll say, well, it's impacting my relationship with my friend. We don't get together as much because she wants to do things as a couple, and we don't because she thinks I don't like him, or she knows I don't like him and I'm worried about her and she doesn't want to talk about it. Any of those cases, I would say, well, isn't this true? You just told me a whole bunch of reasons why you don't like this person. And the client may come around and say, well, yeah, but, and then there's this deflection and dancing around what is true. And the problem here is that if you can't accept where you're really at, it makes it really difficult to make any changes. Okay, you have to own the reality. You don't like this person. I'm not saying you need to announce it. It can be in your head. It can be written in your journal. It could be talking with a coach. Okay, but don't deflect and ignore it. Accept your thinking without judgment. And what I mean is, like, because this client, when I said, I know this is really terrible, but I don't like my sister-in-law, you're judging, I know this is really terrible. Okay, and it doesn't have to be terrible. We don't, the human experiences, sometimes we like people, sometimes we don't. And to be okay with that. So to not judge yourself. When we can accept our own thinking without judgment, it allows you to get into a space of curiosity. And you hear me talking about curiosity all the time. And it's really useful. In this situation, you can be curious about why I don't like this other person. It's not about changing your mind. That may not be the reality because our human experience, we don't have to like everybody. Okay. But you're at least being honest with yourself. Because when you're judging yourself or you're judging this other person, you can't really see what's underneath it. Okay. But you can be honest with yourself. And you might be okay with the fact that I just don't like this person because our values don't align. Okay. Then you know it. But you're taking off the layer of not liking yourself for not liking another person, which just doubles up on negativity and ends up being a bigger problem than it needs to be. So instead, you're out of that judgment and into curiosity or fascination. You can just embrace the fact, like, I'm a human and I don't like this person. It doesn't make me bad or wrong. I'm not judging myself. I'm not judging the other person. I'm just a human. And I don't care for the way this other human is showing up in the world. So owning where you're at without judgment allows you this opportunity to be curious, to grow, and to change if you want to. It also offers you an opportunity to connect more deeply with other people. Back to the example of not liking your best friend's partner. Like if she comes to you and she says, I know you don't like him. You have choices. You can dance around it and deflect and be like, well, what do you mean? I hung out with you guys last weekend. He just didn't talk to me. That's not being real. It's kind of lying, which just all isn't great for a relationship. Or you have the opportunity to connect and be real with your friend. Like, you're right. I have a hard time with him sometimes when he does this thing, or I do have some negativity. And what's also true is that I love you and I value our friendship. And if he's important to you, I want to be able to like him too. So I'm working on that. Let's talk more about, why you like him, why you spend time with him, and those kind of things. This is an opportunity for a connecting conversation. Or at the very least, you are authentic and real and not lying to your best friend. When you say that you don't like him and agreeing with her, like she's right. You're not doing either of you any good or any favors to pretend otherwise. So you need to at least recognize that with yourself. How you want to handle it with your friend, there are lots of options, but lying to you or her isn't connecting, isn't you being authentic. Often, or at least some of the time, there isn't a third person involved. You just have this other person that you don't like. And if that's the case, you will still benefit from telling yourself the truth. I don't like this person. And the point of this podcast and what I'm going to talk about is not to even tell you that you need to think positive thoughts, that you need to like everyone. Because I don't think that that's realistic or true. You may not want to or be able to like everyone in your life. But when you admit that you don't like a person, you still have the opportunity to be curious and authentic with yourself. Curiosity can go a long way. Curiosity can turn into fascination and maybe even lighten up situations for you. Curiosity can help you see when you have a manual that this other person isn't following. It can help you see where your expectations and biases are. And it can even turn into something more playful when you recognize, like, yep, that's just what this person does. And so the situation then isn't so heavy or gripping or intense for you. Okay? And I'm also not going to tell you that you need to like every person or think positive thoughts about them, because there are some people that you may need to keep at an arm's length as a protective mechanism for yourself, whether that's with boundaries or whatever is appropriate for you in your life. So it is possible to move from dislike to like, but that often happens more naturally and organically when you remove the judgment about yourself and about, working towards getting the judgments removed from the other person, because you're curious about the other person. And that may soften your thoughts and help you see things differently over time. Overall, you've got to start with owning where you're at. Being aware that you are creating your own life experiences. And pretending otherwise, you're just delegating your experience to other people. It helps to own where you're at when you just take that layer of judgment off yourself when you don't like a person. And it's okay. It's okay to admit it. And I find it's often helpful to see this as a process, like an evolution. So give it time to shift. You don't need to be in a hurry. I think it can be helpful sometimes to use fictional characters, like from a TV show or a movie or even a book, to help notice things about myself. So, for example, I've been on a fiction kick this summer, a lot of fluffy romance novels, where it doesn't really matter if, I skip a page or follow along. But I have found that it really irritates me where there is this, weak female lead, or it's written in this neat, cute thing that just seems totally unrealistic. I find I get really annoyed to the point where I may not even finish the book. Okay. And I'm just thinking, like, who does that? Why are you lying about that? And it just seems so ridiculous. So in this case, it's a fictional character. I'm not trying to like this person because it doesn't matter, but I do have the ability to notice my brain and my thinking and the way I think people should behave in certain situations and what they should or shouldn't do. And it's helpful to do this like with a fictional character because it doesn't matter whether you like them or not in the scheme of things, but it is a way to practice recognizing your thinking, to notice your biases and your expectations, so that when it comes time to going through this process with real people in your life, it's not as threatening and it's more familiar. So while there are people that I may never like or love, I'm able to take this process and make it about me and my brain and my thinking and not about the other people. And this is empowering because it puts me in charge, or at least in the driver's seat of my own experience. Through my thinking, I'm able to recognize that I'm creating my own reality. And I get more insight about myself, regardless of what the other person is doing. So I hope this gives you an opportunity to release that judgment about yourself if there's somebody that you are struggling with or a relationship that you are struggling with. Own it. It's okay to not like everyone. And then you can get curious. What does this mean? Do some journaling, do some thinking on it. Not change the way that you feel about a person unless you want to, but it does help you to get to know yourself, to explore the way that you think, to explore the way that you think other people should show up, and to take charge of yourself and your life experience. Have a great week. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Stop Overthinking podcast with Kristen Odegaard. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who would benefit from the message. To learn more about working with me and links to social media and free resources, head over to my website, coachwithkristen.com. That's Kristen spelled Kristen. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Have a great week.